At first, an increase in income feels like a clean upgrade in life, almost like the system finally starts rewarding effort in a visible way. Yet what usually happens next is far less obvious because spending habits begin to adjust in parallel, not with dramatic shifts but through small, almost invisible recalibrations that feel justified in the moment. This is where lifestyle inflation begins, not as a single decision, but as a gradual mathematical drift where each rise in income quietly expands the baseline of what feels normal. A slightly better apartment, a more convenient transport option, more frequent eating out, upgraded devices, all of these are not individually irrational, but together they form a pattern where every increase in earnings is partially absorbed before it ever becomes accumulated wealth. The underlying mechanism can be understood through a simple behavioral loop. Income rises, psychological comfort increases, and the brain seeks to maintain that new comfort level. So instead of preserving the previous standard of living and saving the difference, the mind redefines necessity. What was once a luxury becomes reasonable, and what was once optional starts to feel like a baseline requirement for maintaining identity and social positioning. Mathematically, this creates a moving target. If expenses grow at even 60 to 80% of each income increase, the remaining surplus compounds far more slowly than expected. Over time, the gap between potential savings and actual savings becomes less about income level and more about the speed at which lifestyle expectations scale alongside it. There is also a comparative element at play. Humans rarely evaluate financial progress in isolation. Instead, they measure it against perceived peers, environments, and previous versions of themselves. When income increases, exposure to higher consumption standards also increases, and this shifts perception of what is normal. In this sense, lifestyle inflation is not just economic, it is social calibration. The subtle danger is that this adjustment feels like stability. Life does not feel reckless or excessive, it feels improved, organized, even deserved. But from a systems perspective, the structure is quietly reallocating resources from future security into present comfort. The trade is not obvious because nothing feels lost in the moment. Over longer periods, this creates a paradox. Higher income does not necessarily translate into higher financial freedom because the elasticity of spending has expanded alongside it. Two individuals earning very different amounts can end up with similar savings capacity if one allows lifestyle inflation to fully track income growth while the other maintains a fixed consumption baseline. Breaking this pattern is less about restriction and more about separation. It requires treating income increases as a system update that does not automatically redefine cost of living. When the baseline remains stable while income rises, the gap becomes visible, and that gap is where wealth accumulation actually forms. Ultimately, lifestyle inflation is not a failure of discipline but a predictable outcome of adaptive behavior. The same psychological mechanisms that help humans improve living standards also ensure that improvement feels like necessity once it is achieved. Recognizing this loop is what allows financial growth to translate into actual long-term accumulation rather than just a quiet upgrade in expenses.